Good afternoon, everybody, and a very happy Friday to all of you who are joining us for today's live at the waterhole session, which has begun with some more of these beautiful grey-crowned cranes up at Hwangi Safari Lodge in Zimbabwe. Saw them for the first time yesterday, and it was very exciting and continues to be such beautiful and unusual looking birds with those crazy headdresses that they are wearing. But my name is Ben Coley, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours as we sample all that we can find in our great selection of cameras, thanks to Wild Earth and Africam. And as always, it's live, it's interactive, and I am here at your mercy. So please do send in questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, anything you want to discuss, anything that you've read about recently that maybe we can have a debate over. But please do send in anything that is on your mind. It's always lovely to hear from you and to interact with you directly. We've got a rogue marabou stork as well that seems to have joined the fray. They are normally more known for scavenging off carcasses, but will also feed on a variety of arthropodal life. As we discovered yesterday, these cranes are fairly omnivorous. They will eat anything, small insects, small mammals, also grass seeds and little shrubs and things. So should be plenty of food for them, particularly in an area where there is a little bit of water. Probably quite a few insects there, and making the most of that little injection of protein before the drier period really sets in. It is still cool and overcast in the Lowveld today. There was some rain in Hoedspruit last night. I have to say, if there was rain where I am, which is about 15 kilometers outside of Hoedspruit, it must have happened when I was asleep. I saw no evidence of it this morning, but very, very good for the bush to get a last little bit of moisture before, say, the drier winter conditions set in. But we were marveling at the colours of these cranes. Not only do they have the beautiful fluffy hair around the head, or head feathers, we should say. I'm particularly enjoying this sort of tan fawn and yellow wash that they have on their backsides. Very, very pretty birds. And those dark legs in stark contrast to the very white legs of the marabou stork, which are also black. But as many of you may recall, marabou storks well known for the rather unsanitary behavior of defecating onto their legs, so coating it in their own uric acid, but a very clever, as I say, if not the most hygienic method of keeping cool, coating that black skin in white paint, basically, to help reflect the heat. Hello, Ellie. Nice to hear that you are back with us again today, greeting myself and the team. I have Gwyn helping me out for the time being in my ear, but I hope you enjoy the show. It's an area I've never been to, Hwangi. In fact, I've never even been to Zimbabwe, which is terrible. I've done many of the other southern African countries, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia. But for whatever reason, I have never managed to get up to Zimbabwe, but I hope to one day in the not too distant future. And a very warm Friday welcome to Deb Davis, joining us all the way from Pennsylvania in the US. I hope you have a pot of coffee on the go and are looking forward to seeing some interesting sights. We had such a lovely day yesterday. I really enjoyed the birds yesterday. I think, where was it, Rosie's Pan we were at? I think where we saw lots of little passerines, which hung around for a while, which is quite unusual. They came down for a little bit of a bath. We saw petilias and sparrows and waxbills and go-away birds, but got some really nice close-up visuals of some things that we don't often see. But these cranes certainly for me, were the highlight, just to see something unusual. Really hoping we see some of their courtship behaviour, but it is probably far too late in the season now. No evidence of any juveniles, though. They're really investigating the ground, possibly looking for any movement. But as we were saying yesterday, very acute vision birds. They're very good colour vision. Not only will they find lots of movement for those little arthropods, but colour vision is important, particularly if you're eating vegetation and fruits and things, so that you can visually identify those things which are ready to be sampled. Quite a few marabous, it seems, that are hanging out by the water's edge. See their very characteristic reddish head, which is formed by gadusol, if I recall correctly, a sort of a chemical produced by the body which is very resistant to sunlight. So built-in sunblock, not sunburn. Okay, but I think let's head further north. Let's go to Oldonyo up in Kenya and see who is having a drink today. Ah, beautiful giraffe. Giving those forelimbs a good stretch. Going for the bended knee approach as opposed to the splayed front legs. Look how skinny those legs are to support that weight. A big giraffe like this can weigh in excess of a ton, maybe a ton and a half, particularly for the species that we have down here, the southern African giraffe being the largest. These Maasai giraffes slightly smaller, but not a great deal in it. Amazing that those little legs can support that body weight. But if you've ever picked up a giraffe bone, you will know that they're very, very heavy, very, very dense, as they have to be to support that weight on those little toothpick legs. Yeah, but it seems he doesn't want to hang around today. That's all right. Old Onyo, well known for its elephants and giraffe. I'm sure we won't have to wait long before something pops out of the tree line. Sandy Franklin, 69, you're joining us from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. I have to say I don't know much about it, but the name is intriguing. I'm assuming you have a lot of cloud cover there, but it's very well named. It makes me want to go and visit it just from that. But I'm still ashamed to say I've never made it across the Atlantic. I've gone east, but never gone west, never done North or South America. But one day, there's a big tract of land to cover, and it's very much a question of trying to decide where the best places to visit would be. I would very much like to see Alaska. I'd very much like to see the Grand Canyon, to go to Yellowstone, like to see a tornado. Yeah, lots of things to do. I'm thinking I might need more than a week or two. Nice to see some good cloud coverage. It is the rainy season at the moment up in East Africa. Just trying to see if I can get an idea of the direction of clouds. I've become quite akin to figuring out cloud movement. I spend an awful lot of time staring up at the night sky, especially over the last couple of months, trying to see which way the clouds are going, if it's going to bring in some clear weather or things are going to deteriorate. I have unfortunately again had to postpone yesterday's stargazing evening to tonight, which has now been moved to tomorrow, where the forecast does suggest it will improve. This little cold snap, it's hardly cold, but cloudier More unstable conditions hopefully will be passed by tomorrow. I think this is the longest we've ever had to wait at Old Donya to find an animal coming down. There's usually giraffe and elephants just streaming in and out all day, but say possibly with these overcast conditions, not quite so oppressively hot today. Isn't quite the pressure on this waterhole that we often find. Amazing how many animals make use of what is a little puddle, which is probably not more than about what, 5 or 6 meters across, but supports an enormous quantity of game from elephants, giraffe, eland, oryx, zebras. I see all of these animals frequently. But let us go to Naledi. It sounds like we may have some elephants down here in the Lowveld. I think we'll be going to Naledi at some point soon. Just trying to sort that one out. Okay, we're going to try again. Let's head down to Naledi. There we go. Some elephants enjoying the fresh water in the well, blowing some bubbles. I think there's a third. Yes, there it is. A slightly younger one who was hiding behind this juvenile's bolt. Evidently found enough to go and hide behind a tree over there, it seems. Just a small group, though. You do sometimes find these little groups of just 3 or 4 individuals, whether or not they're part of a bigger herd and have just gone off on their own for a couple of days. Perhaps some local knowledge being shown by the cow, recognizing the area and knowing that there's some fresh water somewhere close by, or possibly the rest of the herd is busy feeding somewhere just out of the field of view of the camera. Jessica, you said always nice to see the elephants here. Yes, it's quite common to find the ellies here at Naledi Dam. They do like this fresh water, so the elephants do remember. They've got very well developed brains and they have an excellent mental map of the area as to what resources are available where and when, and they will structure their movements around it. It's usually the matriarch's responsibility to know this. One of the reasons that she is, to anthropomorphize a little bit, voted in, because she has the best knowledge. It's been passed down to her from lots of generations, and she will be the one who will hopefully tend to that herd and ensure that they have everything that they need. Innocent, you're asking if there are any fish in the water. I have no doubt that there are, Innocent, but it would be very difficult for me to tell you what. Chances are there'll be tilapia in there and catfish. I think those are pretty much guarantees. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I'm afraid I'm not much of a fisherman. It's not something that I do very regularly, and my knowledge of South African fish is not wonderful. But certainly when I was at Djuma a few months ago when we had that very unfortunate die-off up at Buffelshoek Dam from some form of sort of eutrophication or a lack of oxygen in the water, brought about possibly by it all being stirred up by a herd of buffalo and that unoxygenated water that sinks to the bottom, being circulated and everything unfortunately succumbed to it. I still cannot quite fathom just how many fish were actually in there. There were thousands of poor dead tilapia that floated to the surface. So I imagine there are probably a lot more in there than you might think. Hello, are you coming in for a closer look? You have beautifully clean tusks. Obviously gave them a brush this morning, knowing it's going to be on camera. May Heyman, you wanted to know why they're drinking from the man-made part there rather than the pan. Very simply, May Heyman, elephants are quite picky when it comes to water. They are easily able to distinguish between standing water that's got mud in it and algae and has been sitting there for a while versus the fresh water. So that well at the bottom of it has a pipe which is constantly feeding fresh water. The overflow keeps the dam that you see on the left there stocked up. So the elephants will always take the fresher, cleaner water. We see it in a variety of our waterholes, particularly up at Oldonyo in Kenya. You'll notice it if the elephants come down more often than not. They congregate around the little pipe that drip feeds that dam. We see it at Elephant Dam in Botswana quite regularly as well. So very normal to see elephants rather taking the water directly from the pipe because it is cleaner and tastier. And it's a problem that lodges and camps have to deal with regularly as well. Elephants coming in and ripping out the pipes to get that clean, fresh water. If I offered you two glasses of water, one straight from the tap, or I don't really condone bottled water, I think it's a big marketing ploy. But if I ever gave you some nice, fresh, clean water versus some water that had been sat in a glass for 3 or 4 days and had a variety of things living in it and had discoloured, I'm sure you would do the same. They say elephants can smell water from a very, very long way away. That's also how they know where to dig in the drainage lines, something we see quite commonly during the winter months, um, often in association with what is called a dolerite dike, which is a vertical intrusion of rock beneath the surface, which acts like a sort of a dam. So the underground water flow pools up against that dike. The elephants know this, they can smell that water, then they use their feet to dig down and wait for that water to seep through. So naturally filtered water, even when the dams are empty. And then, of course, other animals can also benefit from it. Gina Biddle, yes, it was time for this Ellie's close-up. It's a lovely view. Always nice to appreciate the texture, the eyelashes, all those beautiful parts that you don't often see from distance. Innocent Lamini, again, depends on the elephant, depends on the environmental conditions, how much moisture they are getting from the vegetation they're eating, how hot it is outside, the size of the elephant. But a big elephant bull during the dry season, so sort of worst case scenario for the water source, you're looking at anywhere from 150, maybe even 200 litres of water every day. Deb Davis, you're asking about the if there was any sort of conclusion to that rather unfortunate event at Buvosuk Dam a couple of months ago. I don't think we ever got a sort of complete conclusion, Deb. We don't know for sure, but certainly something to do with the oxygen levels in the water, whether it was just a combination of hot weather, of the water diminishing, and a variety of other things. So we think a big herd of buffalo had come through and had sort of churned up all that water, releasing the not very oxygenated layer at the bottom. Because remember, warm water holds less oxygen than cold water, so it was probably a an accumulation of all of those things. But it was amazing how quickly that happened. It sort of happened overnight, pretty much in between drives, and had a devastating effect on the aquatic life there. But I have no doubt it will recover very, very quickly. Okay, I think we are going to change our bush views to an ocean view. Let's head down to Stony Point. Ah, and our little African penguins. Nice to see them out in the open. One's still potentially sitting on that nest in that lovely little alcove. Beautiful view from that apartment. I get the impression these two have had an argument. I feel that this is probably the guy outside who has been kicked out for possibly not pulling his weight or doing something inappropriate. Very much looks like he's in the doghouse or the penguin house. What did you do? Something unintentional, I'm sure. Ah, I've just heard in my ear that the one that we can see the full view of did return from a bit of a hunting trip out in the ocean earlier this morning. So possibly he didn't bring back what was required. It just rather looks like he's he's been kicked out of the house for now. I'm sure he's just warming up after his exploits in the sea. But it's always fun to try and imagine what else has happened. Probably left something lying around, didn't put something away. We've all been there. Trying to have a look to see if we can see any eggs there, but nothing that I can see from this angle. There's just a little bit of a ridge in the way. I don't know if anybody has confirmed if they've seen any eggs in there. But let's hope. Jan Mello, you are loving Stony Point. Yeah, always nice to see something a bit different. The majority of our cameras, of course, are situated in bushy areas, but nice to have an opportunity to witness some of our ocean-going ecosystem, our ocean-going organisms, and that oceanic ecosystem and the shoreline. A nice little contrast. See something a little bit different. Nelly Kenny, you agree? Yes, he's probably just getting some sun, warming up. He's been out doing some hard yards. It's a good opportunity to enjoy some time on dry land. I should say, of course, I'm not quite sure if we can tell the difference between the sexes. Penguins are not one of my fortes. Penguins and fish, anything to do with water, you see, apparently I shy away from. They do share the incubating duties, whilst the other member goes off into sea to look for some food. So it could be her or him who has returned. Those shifts, when they do share it, can last up to 2 to 6 days. It depends, obviously, how long the other member is out in the ocean for, how quickly they are able to find some food. So I have to say I'm having to do a quick check, but it does seem incubation period is somewhere between 38 to 40 days. Agreed, Joe Mello, it is a peaceful camera. Very nice therapeutic camera. A Stony Point I've not actually been to. I've done Boulders Beach and seen the African penguins down in the Cape region. But it's not often that I get down there, in fairness. It's a lot further than you might think from the Lowveld. If you intend on driving it, it is much simpler to fly, certainly. which doesn't help our penguins, of course. No, from a quick read, it doesn't seem there is any way that certainly that I've seen very quickly of sexing the penguins between males and females. Alike in plumage coloration, male slightly larger than the female, especially in bill depth, but exceptions to every rule as always. Same, I imagine, would be true of the hyrax as well at the back, having a good slumber. Wildlife lady, you were asking about the penguins' eggs. So you're asking is it 28 days or longer? It seems that on average it's 38 to 40 days is the incubation period for African penguins. So I know many of you watch these cameras avidly. I'm not sure if we know at what point, if indeed there is an egg there, at what point the incubation process started or whether they are working up to it. Just having a quick skim read here of what would happen next. It does seem that the fledgling period, or the period till which time the chicks will leave the nest, also dictated by how many there are. The more chicks there are, the longer the nesting period. I assume just because the food that they're receiving has to be shared amongst them, and therefore that inhibits the growth rate slightly, but it can be as many as 130 days, so that's like 4 months. But could be as little as about 65 to 70 days. Burst of energy from our little hyrax there. So nimble hopping across those rocks. Good groom of those waterproofed feathers. Love the little bit of pink around the eyes, so a bit of eye shadow. Okay, but always nice to check in and see what's happening down by the seaside. But let's head up to Madikwe to Tau Game Lodge and see who's wandering around up there. Oh, a lone zebra. Oh, not alone. Definitely a stallion. I can see underneath that swishing tail the very, very thin vertical black line. If that was a female, that would be a lot broader. One of the easiest ways to sex a zebra, as long as it's facing away from you. Very, very difficult if it is looking towards you. Side on or the back view is a lot simpler. Oh, what a buffalo! We don't normally see buff up here. That's nice. A dogger boy. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever seen a buffalo here at Tau. We get a lot of wildebeest, but I don't recall seeing buffalo here. Very much a lone dogger boy, as they're known, split from the sort of more classic breeding herd structure. So this will be an old male who is no longer following the breeding herds around as they are constantly heading towards pastures greener and for hydration, heading to water. These guys often will hang around in a very small area, not a territory per se, a home range. It's not defended or demarcated in any way. But always the things you need to be careful of, these cantankerous old things. You see, even that zebra thought better of approaching that buff, I think. It looks like this young elephant bull is going to win the race to the water. I have to say, I've encountered quite a few of these dogger boys on foot over the years, and touch wood at least, I'm yet to have an encounter that has caused me to have to zigzag out of the area to avoid stepping in something that I may have produced. So they do have the reputation of being the thing more than anything else that you have to be careful of and aware of, which I completely agree with. But of course, every animal is slightly different. Every situation is slightly different. Oh, but yes, I've walked around a few corners over the years and encountered a buffalo who's thankfully just always sort of looked at me and let me get out of there or turned around and run off. It's something to always be very, very vigilant for, particularly in the wet months. There's little seasonal pans, little mud wallows, perfect place for a buffalo to hang out. Also, if you're walking through a drainage line, always a good idea, assuming you've got a backup, a second rifle with you. So you leave your guests a few meters away, 10, 20 meters away, you go down and sort of tiptoe into the drainage line, make sure there isn't a buffalo lying in the sand, in the shades down there, just to make sure. Always good to check behind obstacles, termite mounds, massive trees, drainage lines, just double check. It's those areas often frequented by animals for shade. I seem to recall somewhere in the western sector of the Sabi Sands, uh, following some lion tracks, saw a massive termite mound in front of me. Thought it would be a good idea to scale up it to get a lay of the land. And as I got to the top of the mound, I disturbed a pride of about 9 lions who were sleeping on the other side, who thankfully got just as much of a shock than I did and all bolted. But it was a timely reminder to just check behind those big termite mounds on a walk. Yes, great vantage point, height very important. Psychologically, if you're ever dealing with an animal, if you can get to a higher point like a mound, your chances of getting out of there without issue increase dramatically. But always just be aware of those things and check carefully. A beautiful picture indeed, Mayhaman, I agree. Not sure what happened to our buffalo. He got rebuffed by that elephant bull who came in. Whether he's disappeared a little bit further off to the right or thought better of it, but this is such a big, expansive waterhole. I'm sure he will find an area where he can drink without interruption, should he so wish. Often see elephants sort of stretching out quite far into the water. I wonder if that's just to get, again, fresher water that's a little bit deeper, a little bit less sediment that's been disturbed by the shallower waters. But not unusual to see them stretching out. Often see them sort of cleaning away anything on the surface, just mixing the water slightly. Oh, this is, as you said, mayhem and just a beautiful scene to sort of take it all in. Ellies, buff, zebra. I'm sure if we have a scan around, there'll be a variety of other things. I wonder if our crocodiles have been seen recently at the waterhole here. At least four decent-sized crocs that we know of that frequent to live in this waterhole in front of Tower Lodge. And just a great place, having been to the lodge myself on a couple of occasions, just sitting outside and watching the animals come down day and night. Always something happening at this waterhole. So whilst we're enjoying this scene, I thought I'd share something with you that I was reading up on yesterday. Something relatively new. I was aware that it happened, but I thought I would dig out a few extra details to share with all of you. And that is the concept of something called polyembryony, um, which is fairly common amongst parasitic wasps and a few other insects, but very uncommon in the natural world. So, parasitic wasps, things like the braconid wasps, are the species that specialize in uh, paralyzing a caterpillar, or at least um, causing it to, well, temporary paralysis, I should say, and then injecting using its ovipositor an egg inside that caterpillar, and then the larvae will hatch and unfortunately for the caterpillar, slowly eat it from the inside out, starting with the less important parts, the soft tissue, the hemolymph, which is insect blood basically, and ultimately culminating with eating the more vital organs because you don't want your incubator to die very, very quickly. But it seems that it's not uncommon in various species of those parasitic wasps that after they've laid that egg, the embryo then splits potentially hundreds of times, producing perfect genetic copies of that embryo. So only one egg needs to be laid, but potentially there could be hundreds of parasites that actually then hatch. That is a brilliant way to make use of the resources. It also stops other parasites using the caterpillar that that individual has chosen because it's monopolizing the entire body, if you will. And it seems there are even different castes or different casts of those replicas. So some will develop into fully fledged adults, and other ones are specialized at removing or predating upon any other parasites that might also be within that caterpillar. So I just thought that's pretty amazing that an insect can lay one egg, which can then split multiple times and spawn potentially hundreds of offspring. And I dug a little bit deeper into this to see whether or not it is known to occur anywhere else in the animal kingdom. And it seems that there are various species of armadillo that also do this. It's the only mammal that I could find that displays this polyembryony, which I thought was rather amazing. So it seems that the same principle happens. The female armadillo produces a single fertilized egg, and then that egg undergoes splitting and often forming four genetically identical embryos. And then after the gestation period, which is about 4 months, gives birth to four perfect babies. So I'd be interested to know if any of our viewers who spend any time with armadillos, if it's a regular thing to see multiple offspring. But it does seem that they generally produce one egg, which then splits, which I thought was very unusual in the animal kingdom. There's possibility that some sharks might also do it, although I think more evidence is required to say for sure. And there was one other, or a couple of other ones, a couple of other insects, something called a twisted wing parasite, some of the gall midges that we know those gall midges from things like the silver cluster leaves out here. and some trematodes like parasitic flatworms as well. But quite interesting to think that it could be happening in some sharks. And definitely the nine-banded armadillo is apparently the one that it has been most recorded in. Computer enthusiast, you say that this scene reminds you of watching Viewmaster reels in preschool. Uh, I'm sorry to say that I'm unaware of what Viewmaster reels are, but I'm glad that it's giving you a little bit of a chance to reminisce on your childhood, bring back some good memories. Amazing how clear that some of our childhood memories are. And Wildlife Eddie, you're asking if the lodge is close to the water. Yes, very close. So pretty much I would think where the camera is positioned is the fence. So the lodge itself, from where those elephants are, the fence is probably only about, well, I don't know, 30 or 40 meters on this side of the water. So the lodge has been there for a long time. The animals are pretty habituated, and you get some amazing views. You can sit on your deck and watch all the action unfold in front of you. Do you tell about you're saying that would make an amazing horror movie plot? Yes, the idea of polyembry. I'm sure that similar things have been done. There's enough movies about parasitic aliens and things that have taken over bodies. Look back to the original Alien in 1979, the original Alien. Things inside bodies feeding and then erupting forth. But the insect world is crazy. There's some weird stuff that goes on there that kind of defies belief. It is all, a lot of it is the stuff from sci-fi movies, as well as some weird stuff in the deep ocean. I'm sure many of you saw that story that went viral a few months ago, that anglerfish that was seen in daytime in some shallow water close to the surface. That's a terrifying looking thing, like enormous mouth and filled with those needle-like teeth and that little bioluminescent lure that it hangs over its mouth to trap any unsuspecting fishes. And there is even a type of aquatic organism, I don't even know how to classify it, that I believe that that original alien xenomorph was modelled on. Actually comes from some sort of record we've got of a deep sea organism that looks very similar to that classic alien from the movies. But we're still finding new things deep down in the ocean depths. They say we know more about space than we do about the deep oceans. But it's relatively simple to get into space. Well, it's not relatively simple at all. Um, it is you have to deal with an awful lot more problems down in the ocean as well, with the oppressive pressure that far down. Ivan, you're asking if there's an ideal ratio of cleanup animals like vultures and hyenas to predators and then their prey. I don't know if there's an ideal amount, Ivan, because so much of it's dependent on the specific interactions of an area. But generally, as you go higher up the food chain from primary consumer to secondary consumer, or primary producers to secondary producers, primary consumers, and tertiary consumers, generally get less and less. So it's an ecological pyramid, basically, as we call it. If you've got too many predators, they'll eat everything. In terms of the cleanup crew, which I guess we would call the tertiary consumers, I think, yeah, difficult to say because you'll need enough of them to do cleaning up, but if there's not much to clean up, you don't need too many. So it very much depends, I think, on your specific ecology of your ecosystem. Nature is very, very clever at finding its own balance if left alone, unaffected. And we do have a tendency to mess around with it. We unbalance that pyramid and everything comes collapsing down. So yeah, difficult to give you a ratio per se. The ones that you've mentioned there, vultures and hyenas, I would call tertiary consumers. And then you've also what you do need lots of is that missing link, probably the most important link to the entire nutrient cycle. The things that take the dead things and then return them to the soil so that they can be utilized by those primary producers again, the grasses and the plants. So those decomposers, the ants, the dung beetles, those things that return the nutrients to the soil. It has to be a cycle, and for it to be a cycle, you need things to repurpose that material. As well as the energy to run it. Normally, certainly in the guiding syllabus, if you have to draw the nutrient cycle, one of your marks that you get for your diagram will be having sun. You've got to have the engine that drives that system. The sun is the life force of it all. In 99% of ecosystems, but we mustn't forget those deep ocean depths and those hydrothermal vents, where we now know there are complex ecosystems existing in areas that have absolutely no access to that sunlight whatsoever, but is fueled by the geothermal energy beneath the crust underneath the ocean. Chemical interactions there producing nutrients in the water and animals benefiting from the heat as well. And potentially, if we do find life elsewhere, with things like the Europa Clipper heading to Jupiter's moon Europa, and various other moons which we now think also have subsurface oceans being kept warm by the geothermal energy of the moon, which is flexing due to the tidal forces of its parent planet, Jupiter in this case. But we think Titan, the moon around Saturn, has got a subsurface ocean. Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon, as well, and we assume, therefore, and are finding more and more evidence to suggest the same. Completely wide vistas here. More zebra, saw some waterbuck. Here comes another waterbuck in from the left. Elephant, looks like possibly some impalas. On the right-hand side there, we've seen our buffalo. Great diversity of life here at Tau. And those lovely yellow flowers, which I believe Kelly pulled a few strings with her connections from Tau and has discovered, because I know many of you have asked after them, that they are wild sunflowers that are giving that lovely yellow tone in the background. Trixie Rose, you're saying you heard something that sounded just like a red-chested cuckoo whilst watching a show on Thailand. And do I know if they are found in Thailand? Trixie, I have absolutely no idea. But let me do some quick online digging and see what I can find out for you. That'd be interesting. Many of the birds we get here are fairly widespread. All of you can say a quick goodbye to Gwyn if you like. She has just finished her stint. It seems 1 hour of my musing ramblings was enough for her, and Mika will be taking it over from now on. Trixie, so on my app, which I'm sure is um, sort of focused on Africa, I've got distribution from Senegal, Nigeria, South Sudan, Ethiopia, through the DRC, Angola, Zambia, and South Africa. Nothing about Asia, but let me look a little further afield and see what else I can find. Right, Trixie, for interest's sake, a quick online check suggests that it is native to sub-Saharan Africa and not found in Thailand. Um, there is a ruby-breasted cuckoo in Thailand and a plaintive cuckoo. So according to initial research, it possibly wasn't a red-chested cuckoo. We would have to do a little bit of digging to try and find out what it was. Gina Biddle, you were enjoying the zebras running around. Yeah, always fun to see them frolicking in the grass. Seems like a very sedate day at most of our cameras today, but say nice to see a little bit of ebb and flow of the local fauna up here at Tau. But everybody seems to be on a bit of a go slow. I thought even those elephants that were drinking at Naledi were doing so very slowly when we had that lovely close up of the cow. She just had those very sort of doleful eyes, doing everything in slow motion. Possibly something to do with the more overcast conditions and the cooler weather that we are experiencing. Sarah, am I interested in space exploration as well as the stars? Absolutely. Anything sort of north of the atmosphere or above the atmosphere is of huge interest to me. I do try and keep atop of what's going on in terms of the latest technological advances and what is done and being planned to be done in terms of future missions. I suppose something that's been quite topical that many of you may have seen recently. The internet has been awash on my Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds just because of or the algorithms, getting a lot of those weird swirly patterns that people have photographed in the sky recently, which is not aliens, unfortunately. It is a phenomenon caused by one of the SpaceX rockets that gives this sort of strange spiraling bluish pattern in the night sky, which got a lot of tongues wagging recently. But yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff. The Vera Rubin telescope should be coming online soon, which will allow us to look at very large tracts of the sky very, very regularly to see things moving and possibly, find some of these NEO objects, the near Earth objects. That asteroid that was making all the headlines a month or so ago is now seems there's almost no chance that we're in any danger of any impact from that in 2032 or whenever it was. But let's quickly head over to, I think we're going to Cat Pan, where we've got some elephants having a drink, and we will continue our chat. Very, very nice to see. So, yes, there are lots of things. The USLID telescope has also come online recently, and lots of interesting things. A lot of private companies now um, doing their own space missions. This whole space exploration is becoming more and more manageable, more and more cost effective. So, yeah, should be some interesting times ahead for the next few decades. I think James Webb also saw potentially what might be the first exo moon ever discovered, a moon orbiting an exoplanet. So more and more opportunities and more things to go and explore and to try and understand. But I just find it all fascinating, whether it's particularly enjoy the cultural aspect of it, but also the science and the whats, the whys, the wherefores, the maybes out there. I just think are so attractive to just think about the possibilities. Sandy Franklin, you're asking what were those huge yellow and black bees? I'm not sure if you saw one on the camera. If you did, I may have missed it. Generally, if you say huge yellow and black bee, I would think it's probably one of the carpenter bee species, which I do think are stingless. They often make nests within wooded structures in and around houses. They leave these sort of perfect holes within which they lay an egg, and then they put a partition, and then another egg, and another partition, and then another egg. So you have this sort of staggered effect. And oddly, the egg at the back, I think, is normally one that hatches last, despite being laid first. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to get out. And I think if they do, they will then drill through into their neighbour's compartment and potentially parasitize them or eat them. So I'd imagine a carpenter bee is what you're mentioning. It sounds like there might be a couple of drops of rain outside here in Hoodsborough. Gina, any particular sites for space exploration that I can recommend? Um, There's one called Space News, which doesn't deal so much with the stars themselves and with cosmology, which is a little bit more focused on the technology side of it. So the telescopes and satellites, and more of the sort of the geopolitical view of space as opposed to the pure science and exploration. Otherwise, a lot of the generic sites, space.com, Universe Today, these are all really good for getting sort of the latest space news. A lot of the science ones, Science Alert, that will have a variety of things. So, yeah, a lot of the space news is probably the most focused one on the tech side of it. Okay, it seems those elephants didn't want to hang around. Let's try Tembi instead. Ah, some beautiful Inyalas. Seems the cameras are a little quiet today, but that's all right. Always something interesting to see. Beautiful striped pattern of those Inyalas, contrasted against the greenery. Sandy Franklin, you're saying, can I discuss the cloud colours? I assume you're referring to sort of sunrises and sunsets, and the colours associated with them, and that is all caused because of the curvature of the Earth, and the sun being very low on the horizon means it has to pass through an awful lot of atmosphere. That atmosphere is full of dust and pollution and just sort of general stuff, and that refracts a lot of the light, or it blocks a lot of the wavelengths of light from the sun. So the shorter wavelengths, the blues and the greens, don't penetrate through that dust, so we don't get to see them. But the oranges and the reds do, because that's a longer wavelength of light. You're getting more towards the infrared spectrum if you keep getting longer and longer wavelengths, and then on to microwaves and finally radio waves. So the reason we have the beautiful coloured sunrises and sunsets is just because of the angle of the sun, and more importantly the amount of atmosphere that is blocking a lot of those visual wavelengths of light. If you think of the sun's light as a rainbow, there are multiple different wavelengths or colors, and when it's high above the sky, all of those wavelengths penetrate. But when low on the horizon, only the reds and the oranges do. As it climbs higher and higher, more and more colors can get through. So it goes from deep red to orange to yellow, ultimately to sort of white. And then as the Earth continues to rotate, the same happens in the west. Midgetilipow, you're saying back to our carpenter bees that you used to have them burrowing into your log cabin, perfectly shaped circular holes about the size of a quarter. That sounds about right. There are various other borer beetles, shot borer beetles here, some of which have been introduced. They're alien ones that do attack some of the vegetation out here, but certainly sounds like the carpenter beetles that you're describing. Innocent, you're asking about the name Inyala and which language it's derived from. I believe it's from Shona in Zimbabwe, but I can't say with absolute certainty. But I believe it originally stems from a word referring to onion, because of the idea of those stripes looking a little bit like the concentric layers of onion skin. Sarah UK, you're going to a talk by Tim Peake later this year. So yes, Tim Peake is a British astronaut, I believe the first person to officially, or the first British astronaut to officially walk in space while he was up on the International Space Station a little while ago now. I'm sure that will be absolutely fascinating. I've never spoken to a real life astronaut, but their view of Earth and what we do down here must be very interesting. I think it will give you a whole new perspective if you've seen it from the outside looking in and get a greater appreciation of our place in the cosmos. One day, it's on the bucket list to go to space. May have to wait a little while yet. Unless you have infinite financial means, and then suddenly it does become a little bit more reachable, literally. Oh, look, there's a nice, beautiful bull in the background. A big boy, too. Lovely white mane that you can see there. Now, you normally don't have a male with a herd of Inyala like this. They are not like zebras, for example, where you have a stallion and a harem of females. You normally have either solitary males or bachelor groups of males and then groups of females with young. So if there is a male here, one assumes that he has been attracted by some rather promising pheromones that have been released. And you can see he's paying quite a lot of attention to that female. You can see that mane is standing upright. He's showing off a little bit to her. So possibly the hormones and the pheromones that she is releasing is suggesting that she might be coming into estrus. It is around about the right time for breeding season now for the Inyala. Remember, they will coincide their breeding season so that their calving season or lambing season will be around about sort of November, December. That's 7 or 8 months gestation, if I recall. You can see following her, just getting a whiff of that urine. You can see he's licking his lips there, just analysing that scent. And evidently, she's giving off something of interest. She herself, however, does not look to be particularly interested. Sorry, buddy. Try again next time. Hello, little one. Beautiful to see some little ones here. Perfect miniatures of the adults. And of course, if either of those are little boys, once they become sexually mature, their coat will change and develop that much darker charcoal colour. Just retain those orange socks. Okay, beautiful to see some Inyala and interesting to see a male showing a little bit of interest there. But let's head over to Jabulani. Sounds like we might have some buffalo. Ah, sorry. Sounds like the camera's giving us one or two problems there. We're going to keep an eye on it, and should it stabilize, we will then go to Jabulani. But for now, let's keep enjoying these beautiful Inyalas. Mindy Tillipau, you're saying Inyala are your favourite antelope. I've also got a soft spot for Inyalas. They're such delicate, beautiful creatures, and so there's lovely contrasting stripes. I think possibly from having worked in the lodge industry and lived at lodges for prolonged periods of time during work cycles. It's the antelope that you most often see within the lodge grounds. They seem to have figured out that they've got a better chance of survival if they hang around the lodges. So you do get quite accustomed to the Inyalas. We used to have one who hung around at one of the lodges that I used to work at, and we even named him. I think his name is Gerald, but I'm going back sort of over a decade now. Um, oh, George was it? Anyway, something beginning with G. Yeah, and we were sort of very used to bumping into him and saying good morning to him, and then one day the inevitable happened, and we found him hanging in a tree as he had succumbed to a leopard attack, which was a real shame. I remember feeling genuine little bit of sadness having lost that Inyala, because you do sort of do grow attached to these animals you see very, very regularly over time. Sandy Franklin, you're saying they have weird tails. I'm not sure what you mean by weird, but yes, I suppose they've got a sort of a black tip to them, and they are quite fanned out, I suppose, in hindsight, almost sort of fox-like. I guess it just gives them good coverage and a good brush with which to brush away those pesky flies and maybe deal with any ticks that are trying to take hold in those sensitive, hard to reach areas. And if I understand your comment correctly, this is the first Inyala bull for you. I, we do see them on the camera, so if this is indeed your first one, congratulations. But they are beautiful antelopes, certainly. I'm a big fan of the big male Inyalas. Deb Davis, I also hope that I can get to some of those western US national parks. You said when you drove into Yellowstone there was a wolf sitting on a bank beside the road. Yeah, well, that's the dream. I'd love to see a wolf. I really want to see a moose as well. Those things, they're just. I didn't realize how big mooses were until you see one sort of walking past a little hatchback car. So moose is up there, certainly. A wolverine would be very high on the list of things to see, and a bison as well. I'd love to see any of those animals. They also look like fearsome creatures. So yeah, lots to look forward to one day, and I'm sure a lot of bird life that I will need to brush up on when the time comes as well. Well, you've got to give this male Inyala points for effort. He's doing the rounds, double checking he hasn't missed anything. No, nothing of interest there. He's kind of got a bit of a strut on, and so all of that hair on the back of his, well, down his spine, showing off to the ladies. I was watching a bit of old school Friends last night, and just sort of imagine him giving it the Joey, "How you doing?" Thank you, Mika was just appreciating my Joey impression. I'm sure we've heard better. But I don't suggest wandering around sniffing the back sides of your potential targets. Probably not going to go down well in a social situation. Never saw Joey do that. On camera, at least. There must be some nice foliage there that female's feeding from, because that bull was also feeding from the exact same spot earlier, so maybe some late season new shoots there. Of course, Membranyalas are exclusively browsing animals, so even though they look as if they've had their head in the grass for the last 10 minutes or so, they will actually be eating little shrubs and forbs that are springing up in between the grass that we can see. Gina, you're also loving the colours of this bull. Yeah, lovely contrast of the orange legs and that charcoal fur and the beautiful white mane stretching all the way down his back. And I love the little white tips on the top of the horns as well. Sandy Franklin, yes, maybe we'll do an exchange. You can come over to South Africa and I'll show you around some of our wonderful national parks and reserves, and you can return the favour. Definitely up for that. Yeah, so many places. Problem is, America is just so big. I'd like to see Vegas. I'd like to see New York. I think 1 or 2 nights will be more than enough. Too many people freak me out a little bit. But I'd love to visit Vegas at least. And yeah, Grand Canyon, Alaska. That's a long way between the two. Maybe take a boat trip up that northwestern coast, catch an NFL game. That would be fun. But yes, one day we'll get there. Stranger, I'd like to go and see a college game as well. I think it's the Virginia, is it West Virginia? The Hokies, the ones that play Enter Sandman by Metallica every time they come out. I was a massive Metallica fan in my teens, and that just looks amazing. The stadium of, was it 60, 80,000 people all singing along to Enter Sandman, I think would be well worth the visit. So I'm going to add that to my list as well. Okay, it sounds like the camera at Jabulani is now behaving itself, so let's head over there and see if we can catch up with those buffs. Ah, lovely, just a little herd, mix of males and females by the look of it. Also enjoying a little bit of beach time. You do often see these little splinter groups of buffalo. They're not always in enormous herds. Yes, we do sometimes see herds of three, four, five, 700 within the Kruger area. Biggest herd I've ever seen was when I was in Katavi National Park up in Tanzania. Couldn't sort of get in and amongst them. They were out on a floodplain. But I estimate, just looking at the coverage of land of buffalo, there must have been probably between 1,500 and 2,000 of them together in that one particular group. Biggest one I've seen probably in the low Fouts is around about 800. I seem to recall in the western part of the Sabi Sands many years ago. I hadn't been guiding for very long. We parked up at a waterhole just as the head of the herd was coming down to drink, and it was just a constant stream for what was probably 20 minutes of buffalo come down. We estimated, yeah, probably about 800 or so. Very impressive to see. But these all look to be relatively young. It's like a large buff at the back there with his head facing away from us. The rest of them all look relatively young. Whether they've just got separated, perhaps they were harassed by some lions last night and it scattered the herd, and this little group have stayed together. Moonbeam Smith, a buffalo cuddle puddle, exactly. Somehow cuddle puddle works better for lions, I think, than buffalo, but I don't have a better description than that. So yeah, we'll call it a buff cuddle puddle. Picasso, that's an interesting point. One to which I don't have a decent answer for you. We're going back to the Nyalas, which was a lovely sighting of those Nyalas. Saying, bearing in mind they walk a lot on grassy substrates, how do they keep their hooves worn or so short or cropped nicely, and why do they not grow uncontrollably? Um, Good question, Picasso. I don't know. I imagine they do also spend a lot of time in and around riverine areas, and sand is an excellent exfoliator as well. So maybe that's got something to do with it. But a good question. Maybe they have evolved to have slightly slower growing hooves or slightly softer hooves than other animals that frequent a more stony and harsh substrate. I have not considered that, but yeah, interesting. I don't know. Wildlife lady, you're asking me if I'm getting nearer to my Sunday roast. Absolutely, I am wildlife lady. I'm counting the days. Hopefully, in the next week or so, I will be lucky enough to get one of those if my mother is happy to oblige. And you're saying wishing happy on that note, wishing all mothers a happy Mother's Day this Sunday. Yes, certainly in the UK, and I'm not sure which other countries. It is Mother's Day on the 30th. It's different here in South Africa. In South Africa, it is what is it? 11th of May, I think, here in South Africa. Let me just double check. Should know. But yeah, Sunday, 11th of May this year is Mother's Day in South Africa. So strangely, Father's Day, as far as I know, is the same in most places, but it seems there are various different Mother's Day. My mother does rather well. My sister lives in France, so they have a different Mother's Day as well. So she gets three every year, whereas Father's Day falls the same on the same date in all three of those countries. Deb Davis, no, not originally from South Africa, originally from England, born and raised, came over here when I was about 26, and that was the best part of 20 years ago now. So I consider myself an honorary South African based on spending almost half of my life here now. But no, England is home. South Africa is second home, or I'm not sure at what point the two flip over. Uh, but I suppose one of the ultimate tests, if it's England, South Africa in the rugby, I will be quietly, admittedly, if I'm in public, supporting England still. Innocent Lamini, yes, buffalo meat is edible. I have not knowingly eaten buffalo meat, but yes, I believe it is. You can get buffalo steaks, buffalo mozzarella, buffalo milk, various buffalo products that one can find, but I don't know if I've ever officially eaten it myself. Lots of other game meat I've sampled over the years. In fact, I was fortunate enough to have a beautiful piece of kudu the other night whilst I was at Macanyi Lodge in the Timbavati doing an astronomy night there. Thank you very much, Amos the chef, for organising that for me. It was delightful. But I've had various other game meats over the years: bushbuck, eland, gemsbok, wildebeest, warthog, lots of others. They're all very, very tasty. They don't have that very sort of gamey taste that a lot of the European deer and venison has. It's a lot more of a subtle taste. A little bit of musical chairs going on. One gets up, wanders round, circles a couple of times, and flops back down on the beach. Lady Macbeth, you're saying buffalo mozzarella is from water buffalo. If that is the case, I stand corrected. I don't think I've ever had it, so I will take your word for it in that case. Penelope Kenyon, you're agreeing with me with kudu and ostrich as well. We didn't mention, yes, ostrich is a very tasty meat as well. Very, very good for you. Very, very lean. And Ellie, you're saying the second Sunday in May is Mother's Day. So the 11th, as we were saying. I'm not sure where you are, Ellie, but yes, in other places it's in a couple of days. I'm not sure why it is on different dates in different countries. Mayhem, and you're saying Father's Day in Australia is on the 7th of September. That's quite late. I think in England and here it's June. I'd have to honestly have to double check. It's terrible. I hope my parents aren't watching. I can't remember when these dates are. Yeah, 15th of June. Yeah, interesting then that yours is in September, May. So I'm not sure why the dates are different in different countries. I'm sure there's a very good reason for it. Ellie, you're saying Father's Day is Ascension's Day in Germany. Interesting. Lady Macbeth, you're saying, would I want to milk a Cape Buffalo? No, I personally would not. Okay, I think let's head up to Kenya and Old Doniel for a bit. Ah, it's been an antelope fest. Some beautiful eland, weighing in around the same as a buffalo. Of course, our largest antelope species. Looks like a couple of youngish bulls. You can see the very established dewlap, particularly on the one on the left, but still has a bit more growing to do, I would think. Also a very sought after meat. Many people's favourite, eland. When I was working at Sabi Sabi, one of the meals that I always looked forward to, not that we had it very often, was warthog. It was warthog loin that had been stuffed with macadamia nuts and figs, if I recall, and then wrapped in bacon, possibly some blue cheese as well. But that was always a bit of a treat. But Jane, I don't want to give people the impression all we do is eat animals over here. That is not the case. But a lot of the game meat here is very well sought after, certainly. Sandy Franklin, you're saying you might have to be a vegetarian if you come here. I leave that choice up to you, of course. But nice to sample some of the local delicacies. These eland are just enjoying a bit of a lie down. You saw the ripple of the throat then, where that little bolus of food was regurgitated from the rumen back up into the mouth for more chewing, more breaking down with all of that saliva that they produce. I'm not sure for eland, but I still can't get my head around this statistic. But so they say that buffaloes and cows and things can create as much as 200 litres of saliva in a 24-hour period to aid in that breaking down of that food, swallowing it back down to the rumen. The little particles then pass through into the reticulum and beyond to the amarsum and the abomarsum. The larger particles will get brought back up again for further mechanical breakdown from those teeth. Sandy Franklin, you're enjoying the colours, yes, rather like your name, a sort of a sandy wash to them with the greyer patches as well, particularly on the bigger bulls. You see a little bit more grey, but really a magnificent animal and revered, particularly out here for its power. The Bushmen, big fans of eland, believing that they were able to help them communicate with the gods, used in a lot of rituals as well, particularly by the shamans for communicating with souls and spirits. Lots of examples of eland in cave paintings and used in coming of age and women's cycles. All of these sort of traditional rituals involved pieces of the eland for hunters as well. And a couple of them immortalized up in the stars as well, according to the Bushman. Procyon, the eighth brightest star in the night sky, and Canis Minor is seen as the male Eland, and then just underneath it, for us from our perspective in the southern hemisphere, we've got Castor and Pollux, the brightest stars in Gemini, which were considered the Eland's wives, with the male looking over his females, protecting them from whatever celestial dangers there may be. Uh, Lucy, what is bigger between an eland and a wildebeest? Most definitely the eland. The eland are bigger than you might think. A big eland bull can weigh 900 kilograms. I'd have to check the specifics for a wildebeest, but I would think maybe up to about 300 kilograms, so more than double the weight of the wildebeest. So eland is very much on par with a buffalo in terms of size and weight. Henry Main Smith, yeah, who was the poor intern that had to do the saliva research I mentioned. I don't know. A lot of standing around with a bucket, I assume, was involved in that one. This one sporting his oxpecker headdress. Particularly fluffy around the forehead, this one. Okay, lovely to see some Iland for a change up at Oldonio, but let's head back to Medique and to Tau. Magnificent male waterbuck coming in for a drink. And definitely a male elephant. Let's hope there aren't any crocodiles around. Waded across the channel there to reach some of that much greener grass on this side, these sort of reeds. And just somebody asked earlier where the lodge is, so I would say that elephant is very, very close to the fence now, probably not more than a few meters away from the fence itself. There we go. Thank you, Zoomies. Quite surprised we don't see more animals this side, and this nice, soft, more palatable vegetation, you would have thought. Sparse, I'm glad you're enjoying this beautiful bull. He's rather magnificent. And but I'm sorry we didn't see any crocodiles, which you said you would have liked to have seen. But say there is always tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, and the next. You never know. I haven't seen the crocs here for a while, but there's a lot of water here at the moment, so they could be anywhere, possibly even lying in and amongst these reeds in the shallows. Ellie and May Heyman also appreciating that beautiful waterbuck that we saw earlier. Ah, I see these black and yellow things flying around that was mentioned earlier. Let's see if we get a better view if one comes in front of the camera and we can confirm or deny the carpenter bee's suggestion. There are also quite a few jewel beetles that I've been seeing recently, although the insect life is beginning to slow up now, that also have these black and yellow markings. That's another possibility. Blister beetles as well, although they have a slightly more distinctive flight pattern. This is definitely not blister beetles. And they also look a little bit too agile for the other ones I just mentioned, for the jewels. Well, it's a good place for the camera to freeze there. I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't necessarily could be carpenter bees. I'm not sure what else they would be. We also get carder bees out here, but they're a little bit smaller. But possibly one of the sort of the giant jewel beetles. Fancy. Normally with the beetles, they're the Coleoptera order when they're flying. You'll see the elytra, which are their sort of the front part of their carapace sort of hangs out, almost like a pair of fixed wings. Difficult to say for sure. But that looks too big and looks like the wrong shape for carpenter bee, so I might take that back and possibly more like some sort of large beetle. Deb Davis, well, hopefully, yes, I will be back on the screen helping out with the live drives. Hopefully in mid-May, I think that's the plan. So crossing fingers, looking forward to a bit more field time. Oh, Julian Thomas, you're saying they're yellow-crowned bishops. Well, that would make a lot more sense, that they are in fact birds. Always difficult to get the perspective. But thank you, Julian Thomas. That makes an awful lot more sense. They didn't look right for bees or beetles. So, yes, never actually considered that the flying thing might actually be a bird. Occam's razor. Scientific principle that usually the most common answer is the correct one, or the most likely answer. But we're almost out of time, it seems. See Penelope Kenyon thanking everybody, and yeah, you'll see us on the Sunset Drive. I hope so. But it has been another lovely day here. Lovely to start with those cranes again. Some beautiful diversity of life here at Tau. Nice to see some buffalo as well. And I really actually enjoyed seeing the Eland and the Inyalas, particularly the Inyalas. That was a really beautiful sighting and some interesting behaviour. But for myself and FC, we wish you a very happy rest of your Friday, and we will hopefully see you on the Sunset Drive this afternoon. Thank you very much.